Hello, trumpet players. In this video, we're going to talk about how to totally master your skills. So this is my fourth time trying to make this video. And I think what I did wrong in the other videos, because when I get to editing it, I'm like, this is just not right. This is just not right. And it started off as a request from somebody. They wanted to know how to use my books. And I think that's where I went wrong, is I was trying to talk about my books instead of the concept of how to master your skills. And, you know, if you use my books, I like that, right? I don't mind using this channel as a way to promote my books. And I don't think anybody would fault me for that, right? Because that's how this stuff works. But that's not true to how I operate. So I've decided this time what I'm going to do is take you through the step-by-step process and then mention my books along the way, okay? So that's how we're going to do this. Now, I'm going to do a scale. Let's go through the process with a scale that I am learning now. So you should never stop learning new skills. Here I am, 56 years old. You should never stop learning new skills. This is the scale I'm on at this point. And so the first step when you're learning a new scale is to do what I call the expansion studies, okay? And that's when you go the first two notes. Now, if this is for band, you go up. If it's not for band, you go down. And we'll talk about the different books on how to do this with the major scales. I have books for that. Since we're not doing this for band, we're going to go down, not up. So the first two notes of this scale. Now this scale is a scale that I extrapolated. I like that word. It's a scale that I extrapolated from a Kenny Garrett solo. Now, I don't know if he practices this scale. I don't know if it even is a scale, but it's something that I heard in his solo, and I said, hey, that would be really cool as a scale. Now, maybe maybe it's something that he does. I call it a double altered pentatonic. All right, so we're going down first. And we're going to do that 10 times. And this is one of the most important concepts of of totally mastering something. Okay? If you want to totally master something, you don't skip the easy parts. And I know that a bunch of you guys are guilty of that. Oh, well, that's just D to B flat. Why would I do that 10 times? Well, ask yourself, do you want to be the guy that all of the music is so hard you have to really put tons of effort every performance? Or do you want to be the guy that gets on stage and everything is too easy? Make that connection. If the way you practice all the time is everything is too easy, that's when you go on stage and everything is too easy. Okay, you don't get there, you don't get apples from an orange tree and vice versa, right? You don't get to easy from struggle. That's a myth. So yes, you do this 10 times. That's 2. 3. And I like to sing and finger between, so if you were going to see me practicing this skill, this is what it would really look like. Do, 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 Now I kind of lost track because I normally keep track, right? But let's say that was 10 times. The next thing you do is go to the next note and do that 10 times. And yes, even that's going to be quote unquote too easy. If you do all of this correctly, all of it will be too easy, okay? Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. And notice I'm not speeding up, right? I'm not doing it 10 times, starting slow and working my way up fast. No, you get to play fast. Where speed comes from is from familiarity. The more familiar you are with something, the faster you can play, right? So, and how do you increase familiarity? You go slow. It's one of those ironies in the trumpet world. You know, you've heard people say that to play high, you need to be able to play low. It's the same with playing fast. In order to play fast, you have to practice slow, okay? Do, 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 do. Now I'm going to jump ahead. Do not take this as a sign that, well, Mr. Lewis jumped ahead, so I can jump ahead. No, I'm only giving you an example. If this was really me practicing the scale, I would do all the 10 times. I think that was 6 times. All right? Now we're going to add another note. And I forgot one part. When I add a new note, I usually put a fermata on that new note, so it would be more like this. That way, psychologically, that note sinks in a little bit more, right? Then you take the fermata out. And do it. Now that's 2 times, do it 8 more times. Da, 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 da. Now, the singing and fingering is extremely important for 2 reasons. One is you're developing your ear. I'm of the opinion now that scale studies are more ear training than they are technique. The technique, that's easy. You can get that. This is easy to develop. The ear training takes a lot more. And the singing and fingering between helps speed that along a little bit. Oh, and the other reason is for chops, right? Da, 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 da. Now we're going to pretend that was 10 times. Now that we've hit the bottom note, we're going to start going now up. Oh, I forgot the fermata, right? Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Now I'm going to stress one more time. Each time you add a new note, you want to repeat that 10 times. Notice I haven't made any mistakes except for in the procedure I forgot to add fermatas, okay? But I haven't made any fingering mistakes or anything like that. And the reason I chose this scale is this is a scale that I haven't done yet. Okay, I haven't. This is on my to-do list. I've already done C, I've already done C sharp. The D I haven't done yet, okay? So, yeah, I haven't made any mistakes. Imagine going through life from this point forward, from now to the rest of your life, never having made any mistakes on your scales. Imagine how much different of a player you would be as a result. Imagine the kind of confidence you would have. Just overall confidence in your playing because the scales are so solid. And, that foundation. Remember, the scales are the foundation in terms of what notes you play, not rhythmically, but in terms of what notes you play. The scales are the foundation of everything that you're going to ever play. That's not necessarily true of just the major scales, but this same concept applies to all the scales, the chromatic, whole tone, diminished, augmented. Those are the symmetric scales. And then you have major scales, minor scales, and there's like 5 different kinds of minor scale. Okay? So now we only practice 3 of the minor scales, right? But then there's pentatonic scales. And there's minor pentatonic. And this one's a double altered minor pentatonic. And so I don't practice, so there's 2 kinds of minor pentatonic, right? Some people call this minor pentatonic, right? Some people will say that. When I say minor pentatonic, and that is a minor pentatonic, but when I say minor pentatonic, I'm talking where you take a pentatonic and flat the 3rd note. That's a different scale, and it has a different function. The scale we're doing now is double altered, so we would say that minor pentatonic is an altered pentatonic. This one is an altered pentatonic where the 5 and the 6 are flatted. It sounds like that Lord of the Rings when they go to the elves, right? So now I'm getting ahead of myself, right? So we're going to do the expansion until we get to the top of our range for that day. And you're going to, each time you add a note, so we just did the E flat, right? So the next step would be to add the F sharp. We would do that 10 times. Without, the next ones would be without the fermata. Add another note. And you keep adding more notes like that, repeating 10 times. I'm going to say that like a broken record. Repeating 10 times until you get to the top. Now, that's the expansion studies. The expansion studies are only done once. You do them to introduce yourself to the scale. Now, I have students that like them so much, they do them over and over again. And that's okay. That's your choice, right? But according to my system, you do the expansion studies once because they're the best way to introduce you to a new scale. And if you go back to my learning formula, you introduce yourself to the material, you repeat the material, and then you integrate the material with your other stuff. This part that we just did now, the expansion studies, are an introduction to that scale, and we don't ever come back to that again officially. If you like it, that's different. Do what you like, right? But no, we don't come back to it again. And that's wonderful news, right? Because it is dreadfully boring. It can take a few days just to get through one scale, depending on how much practice time you've got. Okay? So after you've done that, you want to start doing now the tonalization studies. Now, before we talk about the tonalization studies, this is what the person who requested this video was asking about the books specifically. So let's talk about that real quick. I have 2 expansion books. One of them is only an ebook, and the other one is a physical book that you can buy all over the world. Let's talk about that one first. That one's called Band Scale Expansion Studies for trumpet, right? And basically, if you play this style of scale for band, if that's what you are required to do for band, that book uses the expansion studies to help you master those scales, and it goes through all the keys, and then it has also at the end chromatic. So that the whole expansion thing is all written out for you, for your convenience. Most, there's people who buy it, and I'm glad they do. You don't have to buy the book. You could do this by yourself. With the way there's no book for this scale that I'm doing for you now, right? So, and I'm not trying to talk you out of not buying my books. Out of buying my books, but those books are there. I want to make this clear, right? Those books are there for your convenience. For example, if you're not exactly sure that you know the right notes, you can get the book. And it's a great way to get started with scales. Okay, so the other book, and that's what I said when we first started. If we're doing the band scale expansion, then we go up from the first note, not down. The reason we go down in the other book, that's called the Major Scale Expansion Studies, and that's an ebook. And the reason why we go down first is because that one book works for all ranges. So if your range only goes up to G, you can use the book, you just don't keep going, right? Or if your range goes up to high C, you can still use the same book. You just stop when you get to the high notes, right? So that's what we were doing, was the normal expansion studies, because this is not for band. Okay, so now remember, I'm going to say one more time, the expansion studies are just an introduction. After you've done the expansion studies, you want to do the tonalization studies, and this goes on for the rest of your life. The tonalization studies are forever. And that sounds like a ball and chain. It's not really. And we'll talk about that quickly before I sign off. Here's what the tonalization studies are like. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail because there is already a video about the tonalization studies, okay? So look for that if you're interested in what the tonalization studies are. But here would be, and I'm going to go real slow because, like I've said, I haven't ever practiced this scale before. We're going to do number 1 in the tonalization studies. Okay, so one of the things that makes the tonalization studies a little unique is that we have 4 variations for each motif type. So now we're going to go, that was the motif going up, now we're going to do motif going down. And then we do up and down. And then we do down and up. And we have 5 different patterns that we use. That I call that the bare minimum, right? We have 5 of those. You can watch the tonalization video, okay, to learn more about that. Now, Once you've done the tonalization studies on that scale 10 times, there's that number again, right? 10 times. Then it's time to integrate it into the other scales that you have already. You know, for a long time, I was doing old scales and new scales every day. That's a good idea if you've got the time for it. If you don't, you have to split it, right? On one day you do old scale, the next day you do a new scale. And you can organize it like that. That's part of my accumulative. I teach what I call the art of accumulative practice. And that's part of that. Now, so what are we talking about here? After you've learned a scale, it should go into a rotation so that you never want to be partial towards or against. You know how people say, hey man, what's your worst key? I'm like, hey man, I don't have a worst key. I actually put a lot of effort into not having one of those. I say, well, hey man, what's your best key? Well, I don't have a best key. I put a lot of effort into not having favorites. And you know, this is how life works. Yeah, I learned this when I went to work out with one of my brothers, my brother Jeff, right? Both of my brothers were football players in school. Later, when I was in college, I thought I needed to start working out with weights, and I did that for a long time. And I noticed that my pec on this side was bigger than this side. And it turns out later I figured out it's from holding the trumpet, right? If you hold the trumpet and feel that, it's a little bit more firm. But I asked my brother how, and this is wisdom that I've used now for the rest of my life, right? I said, if one side's bigger than the other, how do you get them? Should I now put more weight over here? And he said, no. If you want them to even out, you put more weight on both sides. Wow. You know, you can use that in every aspect of your life. Whatever you want to be the same, everything that you do in your life, if you want things to be the same across the board for each one of these items or products or whatever it is that you're doing, you give them all more attention. And that's how I view the scales, right? If we want to make sure that we don't ever have a bad key, if we want to make sure that we never have a good key, that we are equally fluent in every single key, then we have to give all of the keys equally more attention. And that's my philosophy. So so you have the only way to do that is to be organized. And you know, you've heard me talk, if you've been watching my videos, you've heard me talk about what it means to be a supernatural trumpet player. Being organized is a huge part of that. It's not natural to be organized. You have to do something over and above what's natural. That's how you become supernatural. That's what super means, over and above, right? Supernatural means you're doing something that other people who just operate in the natural can't do. And being organized is a huge part of that. Okay, so you write down what scales you're doing and you make sure that you don't favor one scale over the other. I have a sheet with a check mark. Well, actually, I put dates, right? So it's like a spreadsheet almost, but it's printed out. And when I do that scale on that, I put the date that I did it. And that means don't do that one again until all the scales on my sheet are done. And that's the third part of this, right? So we've talked about three things basically. We've talked about introducing the scale properly. Then we talked about doing the tonalization studies. That's the repetition part, right? You're going to repeat these scales now for the rest of your life. Now, let me say this. I haven't said this yet. You should only do one key a day. Only one scale per day unless you're doing 2 different parts of your practice time, right? That's different. I just realized that. I've been telling people for a long time, 1 a day. What I mean by that is that you shouldn't try to do all of the scales in 1 day. That's not, now I do have in my tonalization, in my daily routines book and the other books, we do go through all the major scales in the articulation studies, in the long tones, we do that. But those aren't skills. And that's just to familiarize it, once again, on a daily basis, those different keys, right? So yeah, that's number 2, is to do the tonalization studies. You're going to be doing this now for the rest of your life. Then, the third part of that is to make sure you have some sort of rotation so that you don't favor one scale over the other. That's how this system works. And if you did it this way, you would be amazed. It will change your playing. It will transform your playing. That's how big of a deal this is. It will because you're not just working on your fingers. That's where people go wrong. You're not going to be just working on your fingers. You're working on your ears. You start hearing stuff differently. This is especially true once you get through all the major scales twice. So you learn the major scales first. Then the second time you come around, something happens. I've seen it in every single student. Something happens. This is especially true if they memorize the scales. And I don't mean memorize the scale. I'm talking about memorize all 20 tonalization patterns for each of the major scales. When they get there, they're just, what happens is, before that time, they're basically illiterate as musicians. Once they have all their tonalization studies for every key memorized, they are no longer illiterate, and they actually speak the musical language in terms of harmonies and melody and stuff like that. They actually speak that it's coming from within them, instead of something that they have to manhandle to make happen, right? So this is how we master the scales. Now, talking about the tonalization studies, you could figure that out on your own, but we have tonalization studies books, more and more of them coming out as we speak, right? Because it's once again, I said this earlier, you can do this yourself, but for your convenience. You can have these exercises to help you remember. Do you know the biggest thing with the tonalization studies is remembering what's next? That's the biggest thing. Now, if you're organized, you don't need the book, right? So anyway, that's how I recommend that you master the scales. And if you do it this way, you will truly master whatever scale you choose to learn, okay? This is, in my opinion, one of the most important things I teach. I say that about a lot of stuff, right? But this is definitely way, way up there at the top of the list. Okay? Anyway, if you got questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to, otherwise, anyway, God bless you. I was going to say something. I couldn't remember what I was going to say. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video. I think that's what I was going to say. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. Okay, good. Thank you for watching this video. I wanted to spend just a minute to let you know that there's a better, more convenient, more organized way to access all of these videos. We have literally hundreds of videos here on YouTube, and quite frankly, it's a bit of a mess. So, to make it a little bit more organized and easier for you to access what you want to access, I created a separate page, a separate area on my website. That's eddylewis.com. And if you go to eddylewis.com, click on the menu, click on videos. It will take you there. I have the videos categorized, and then within those categories, some of them, like the educational videos, you can click on it and go in there and look for the videos specifically that you're looking for. Okay? So go to eddielewis.com, EDDIELEWIS.com. Thank you very much.